Ladies and gentlemen, I want to read you an Economist YouGov poll. And this is just recent. Who has been the best president in the U.S.? And we're going to get to Rush Limbaugh in just a second. But I want to read you this. Americans appear to be thinking mostly about the latest occupants in the White House as we look ahead to Monday's commemoration of President's Day. In the latest Economist YouGov poll, the most recent two former presidents received the most attention, with far fewer reaching back in history to name the historical names whose February birthdays are the reason President's Day exists at all. President Barack Obama tops the list at 18%. So, as the best president of all time. So, here. President Obama tops the list at 18%, just edging out Abraham Lincoln at 17%. Donald Trump comes in third at 13%, ahead of FDR at 12%, Ronald Reagan 10%, and George Washington 9%. President Joe Biden. Okay, so who is the best president in American history? Americans pick President Obama, Lincoln, and President Trump. And President Trump, so this is all respondents, not just Republicans. President Trump surpasses FDR, George Washington, Kennedy. And so that's with 92% negative media coverage. I will put the YouGov link below if you don't believe me. Now, Republicans, when Republicans were asked, in 2018 it was Reagan 36%. Now it's Trump by a wide margin. Now it's Trump by 36% in 2021. Ronald Reagan 18%. Abraham Lincoln 13%. George Washington 11%. George Washington has to be up there, if not the best president of all time, because he started us off on a road towards peaceful transitions of power, which is what other countries, many other great countries, didn't have until relatively recently. But you have President Obama, who actually ended that tradition by investigating his direct political rival in Trump. And if you say, well, no, he didn't, it was James Clapper, there was no political motive at all from President Obama's administration. Yeah. To think that would be to believe that President Obama did not have control over his administration, which of course he did. And he knew his Secretary of State had private servers with top secret intel on them. He knew everything that he said he didn't know. But again, that's a whole other story. 92% negative media coverage. That's what, context I'm going to give you on this channel. 92% negative media coverage, and he still is number one in the Republican Party by far. And in terms of respondents in general throughout the country, he's one of the best presidents, because people in general realize what Trump had to deal with. In terms of the negative media coverage, and in terms of the accomplishments that were just erased from history by journalists that were turned into activists. But hit subscribe to this channel. We're on our way to 200,000 subscribers. This is a very, very important segment. And tell your friends about this channel. If you want to go to my website, it's hagoodman.com. You can read my writing in The Hill, The Huffington Post, Salon, The Jerusalem Post, The Federalist, The Daily Caller, other publications. You can see my debates and to my new Patreons. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to read you this. Before we get to Rush Limbaugh, I want to read you this. Obama camps claims smear over turban photo by Ewan McCaskill in Washington, Monday, February 25th, 2008. This will be within the pinned comment. Candidate Barack Obama's campaign team accused Hillary Clinton's beleaguered staff yesterday of mounting dirty tricks operations by circulating a picture of him in African dress, feeding into the false claims on U.S. websites that he isn't Christian. David Plouffe, Obama's campaign manager, described it as the most shameful, offensive fear-mongering we've seen from either party in this election. End quote. See, one reason that, I would annihilate anyone in a debate pertaining to, how Trump is unique in, things that he's done, or that how Trump is really this bigoted person and Hillary Clinton isn't. And we can get to the super predator comment. We can get to things that Bill Clinton has done. We can get to the crime bill, the 100-to-1 sentencing disparity for the same narcotic that his son Caligula used, Biden. Or perhaps still uses, but once used. I have to speak in roundabout terms because of the algorithm. But ladies and gentlemen, Democrats, and you've seen the Lincoln Project people, the same people who disparage Rush Limbaugh today, have been retweeting the Lincoln Project for 4 years. Now we know that the allegedly all the allegations of despicable, nefarious criminal conduct from the Lincoln Project, or its co-founder and perhaps others who knew. These were Bush, Cheney, and Rumsfeld era Republicans. Now, they got $90 million from the same people now. Liberal Democrats who now disparage Rush Limbaugh. But really quickly, quote, the most offensive, shameful fear-mongering, the most shameful, offensive fear-mongering we've seen from either party in this election. I come from the left. My whole life, I was a liberal Democrat or progressive right before I realized that I was a liberal Democrat my whole life and then became, went further left and realized the whole thing is a gigantic racket and scam. And it's based upon these promises that Democrats will never fulfill. And people like Bernie Sanders and AOC funneling angst and anxiety and the hopes and ideals. There are good people on the left. They want things that perhaps aren't feasible. Medicare for all, Green New Deal legislation, universal basic income. They want an immigration policy, which is feasible. But Democrats aren't interested in any of that. So they have Bernie Sanders and others funneling the votes. Oh, look at crotchety Bernie Sanders with his big mittens. Oh, yeah. And they've turned him into a little cartoon. But they've turned him into, we can go on forever. He couldn't even endorse one of the $20 million venture capital funded pundits who helped prop him up and helped elect quote-unquote progressive politicians. Look, we can go, the whole thing's a racket. Look, the Lincoln Project knew about the racket. They got $90 million from the same people who are disparaging Rush Limbaugh. But why am I focusing on this? This is just one example. I come from the left, so I realize the hypocrisy. These people exist. These people live. Many of them live to condemn and judge. Today's left is infinitely worse than the televangelists of the 80s. Because whereas the televangelists would say, I have sinned, forgive me, Democrats don't even acknowledge that they've sinned. Many of them don't. They are impervious to hypocrisy. The disingenuous and duplicitous nature of many of these people online going after Rush Limbaugh, rejoicing in his demise. These are the same people who, when you say, hey, wait a second, it was Hillary Clinton who started the birther myth. You sure it was wrong when President Trump, it was wrong when Rush Limbaugh furthered it, but it started, Trump never battled President Obama in a primary. That was the dirty tricks and the Clintonian type of political attacks happened in 2008. You even had a whole bunch of Clinton supporters with the Pumas who wouldn't vote for President Obama. And so these are, the birther myth started by the Clinton campaign. I'll read you this. AIDS for Clinton, who is fighting a last-ditch battle to keep her hopes for the White House alive, initially tried to brush off the Fuhrer, but later denied having anything to do with the distribution of the picture. So the initial attempt to brush it off said, well, what's the big deal? He should be proud of his heritage. That was what they were saying. In a New York Times article, one of her top staffers was saying, well, what's the big problem? They tried to put the birther myth was started by the Clinton campaign. This is just one article proving this. And you don't have to look like, you have to think like a Democrat a lifelong Democrat, which I was up until very recently. I want Americans home from never-ending counterinsurgency conflicts, which brought me from Bernie Sanders to President Trump. There's a direct line. Please quote me. If you're watching this, you don't like me, you don't like how I went from Bernie to Trump, please quote me, because there's a direct line from Bernie Sanders 2016, maybe not so much Bernie Sanders 2020, but Bernie Sanders 2016, there's a direct line from Bernie 2016 to Trump. And it's actually a very good thing, because when you voted for President Trump, you got First Step Act, prison reform legislation, President Trump allocated more funding to historically black colleges and universities than any president ever, and made the funding to HBCUs permanent. Détente between North and South Korea. President Moon Jae-in just recently stated he wants Biden's administration to continue and further Trump's foreign policy accomplishments. Same with Benjamin Netanyahu in Israel. He wants Biden to further President Trump's foreign policy achievements. With the Abraham Accords, peace between Israel, UAE, Bahrain, Morocco. If people try to undermine these accomplishments, saying, well, they're just photo ops, then why do the administrations of those respective countries want Biden to continue the accomplishments of Trump's administration? Which gets us to Rush Limbaugh. They started the birther myth, Clinton. Rush Limbaugh furthered it. Guess who gets blamed? Guess who gets blamed for it? Only Limbaugh, only Trump, not Clinton. Democrats, when they look into a mirror, they do one of two things. They close their eyes, or they open their eyes and turn into Medusa. Or, they turn into a block of stone. Because they're not capable of handling the fact that they're hypocrites, and they're not wise enough, or perhaps intelligent enough to realize that as hypocrites they cannot condemn and judge, because they engage in the same behavior that they condemn. They enjoy condemnation and judgment, but when they are given an article in The Guardian, they disregard it. Well, it wasn't that big of a deal. Same thing with Tara Reade and Biden. They're impervious to the reality that they're hypocrites. They don't care. You have pundits who have been caught with racist writing and bigoted and sexist writing, whether it's MSNBC or TYT or whatever, and they ask for forgiveness, but they still condemn and judge. The condemnation and judgment is what keeps the Democratic Party afloat. It's not policies, because if it were just policies, the left would have broken off a long time ago and started and built up the Green Party. Because they would have realized there are the policies that Democrats that left-leaning voters want, the Democrats will never give them. They won't even abide by promises on stimulus checks. But look at all the people who are now rejoicing. He was a bad person. Well, was Bill Clinton a good person? Well, it's different. Was Hillary Clinton a good person? It's different. What about Joe Biden? Good person? It's different. It's different. Rush Limbaugh. And so you can actually point them to the information that, well, Kerry voted for the Iraq War, so did Biden, so did Clinton. President Obama destroyed Libya with a failed NATO intervention. Did Rush Limbaugh do that? It's different. It was for a good purpose. They're not capable as liberal, many, not all, but many liberal Democrats are not capable of evaluating and judging themselves in the manner that they judge Rush Limbaugh or Trump. Because if they were to do so, if they were going to utilize that standard, they would then say, oh my God, we can't condemn. It was Clinton who started the birther myth. My goodness, we can't condemn Trump. Well, what's worse than the chaos and the mayhem and people being bought and sold now in Libya because of President Obama's foreign policy? What did Trump do that's worse than that? They're about public relations, and they're about this tribalism that they utilize against their own in terms of the left. The Democrats despise Bernie Sanders and Green Party voters far more than they do Trump. They just pretend to be, that they're obsessed with Trump's personality. They are. But he's not really like, if he was really a threat to them, they would have made sure he couldn't use the authorization for use of military force, or they would have curtailed his certain powers as president early on. They didn't do that. But you better believe they cheated Bernie Sanders, and you better believe they try to paint Jill Stein or Tulsi Gabbard as Russian operatives. But ladies and gentlemen, what did Rush Limbaugh do that's worse than what Hillary Clinton did? I want to know. Clinton called black youth super predators, okay, who must be brought, that's what she said. And if you look at the quote, who must be brought to heel, who lack empathy, Biden used the predator comment as well. Because of Biden, there was a 100-to-1 sentencing disparity for the same narcotic that his son was caught with. Look it up. I'm not making it up. I've already given links to all of that in prior segments. I'll put the link below. I mean, I could go ahead and give you 30, 40 links right now. Or articles. There are endless articles. There's an endless amount of evidence in terms of proving that Democrats, many of whom are absolute hypocrites when they go after Rush Limbaugh and President Trump. But they don't care. It's always different. When you prove them wrong in a debate, they say you're obfuscating. You're mischaracterizing. You're making misleading statements. Here's a fact check for you. Well, that fact check doesn't address what I'm talking about, number one. And number two, it checks the fact that it checks is sentiment, not an actual fact. The Dodgers winning the World Series in 1955, if someone says the Yankees did, no, it was the Dodgers. End of story. That's a fact check. But now the fact checking is, let's further a discussion or debate under the banner of fact checking, so you don't have to actually use critical thinking skills. You could just say, well, that's not true. Look, they do this. People don't debate anyone who has Trump derangement syndrome or any Democrat at all. Never do it. Never do it. Especially not on social media. I don't have Twitter. I don't have Facebook. I haven't had Twitter and Facebook for 2 years plus. But going on 3 years, thank God. It's like the best decision I ever made in my life. But if you debate and you show them, the way their minds work is, well, Biden was accused, but Trump was accused by more people. And, well, yeah, Clinton did this, but you know what? Rush Limbaugh did more of what Clinton did. There's no moral compass. It's just it's a bizarre and absurd calculus, moral calculus, based on political utility. And so they exist to judge and condemn, which is why they rejoice when Rush Limbaugh, passes away. But his ideas, his arguments, oftentimes were spot on. The problem, they don't like Tucker Carlson, they don't like Rush Limbaugh, they don't like people who actually utilize critical thinking skills, because it forces them to get into a debate. Democrats don't like debate. They like carefully manufactured public relations spins. The way to overcome that is to think like a Democrat and show that this started, for example, the birther myth, started by Clinton's campaign. It short circuits, and that's what Trump should have done, see? Instead of the endless tweets, he should have showed this article and says, okay, you want to paint me as a racist? Well, here, you're the ones who started all of this. The crime, again, he could have done this. It's so easy to do because the articles are still up. In this day and age, even 8 years ago, or even 12 years ago, is like ancient history to most people. Even President Trump's campaign. How hard was it to find this article? They should have linked articles. That, everything from climate change. Okay, they blocked Keystone XL, but the equivalent of 10 Keystone XL pipelines were built, and nobody said a thing during President Obama's administration. That's literally almost the verbatim headline from the Post article. Anyway, give me your thoughts below. You're talking about really despicable people who have convinced themselves that they're morally superior to Rush Limbaugh because they don't like his vantage point. He was controversial and true. Like, did he say things that weren't accurate or stupid sometimes? Yeah, sure he did. He was wrong about Donovan McNabb when he was on ESPN. Donovan McNabb is one of the best quarterbacks of all time. He really was. Had nothing to do with race. But Rush Limbaugh was out of his element. So when he was on ESPN, he made that statement. But again, sure, he made, mistakes and he said things perhaps he shouldn't have, but so do Democrats. All the time. And in this day and age, you judge, like, this man was a force in conservative politics, but in a very good way, a positive way, not a negative way. He didn't sow division. He didn't show, hatred. This is what Democrats say when a person like Rush Limbaugh presents arguments that they can't easily refute, which was most of the time. So they harp on the birther myth, for example, that Rush Limbaugh furthered, that, oh, by the way, Hillary Clinton started. A lot of, this is like some kind of Freudian or, I don't know, like a lot of the things that they dislike about conservatives are things that they dislike about themselves but can't come to terms with. And so when they go after Limbaugh for the birther myth, they're the ones who started the birther myth. Give me your thoughts below. God bless Rush Limbaugh's family. And it's really sad to hear of his passing because whether you disagreed with him or not, he was a legendary voice in radio, which is a medium like that. It's a wonderful medium that needs to come back. Give me your thoughts below. Hit subscribe right now. Thank you.